In a world where love is celebrated with grand gestures and lifelong promises, she stood at the brink of her happiest day, unaware that everything she believed in was about to shatter. The church was filled with laughter and anticipation, the scent of flowers filling the air, and every eye was on her as she prepared to take that first step down the aisle. But just minutes before she was to say, "I do," a simple envelope was handed to her, an envelope that held the power to change everything. As she opened it, her heart raced, her breath caught in her throat, and in an instant, the world around her seemed to fade away. What she read inside made her hands tremble, and without a second thought, she turned and ran, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces and a love story that would never be the same. What could be so powerful, so earth-shattering, that it drove her away from the altar? This is the story of a moment that changed everything. A moment that will leave you questioning everything you know about love, loyalty, and the secrets we keep. The warm summer sun peeked through the lace curtains of the bridal suite, casting a soft glow on Amanda's radiant face. Her hazel eyes sparkled with anticipation as she gazed at her reflection in the ornate mirror. The bustling streets of New York City seemed a world away from the serene sanctuary of St. Patrick's Cathedral, where in just a few short hours, she would become Mrs. Lucas Bennet. "You look absolutely stunning, sweetheart," her mother, Linda, whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Amanda turned, the ivory silk of her gown rustling softly. She embraced her mother, inhaling the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5 that had comforted her since childhood. "I can't believe this day is finally here, Mom," Amanda replied, her voice trembling slightly. "It feels like just yesterday Lucas and I were sharing our first slice of New York cheesecake in Central Park." As if on cue, a knock at the door interrupted their moment. Amanda's best friend and maid of honor, Jasmine, poked her head in, her curly hair already perfectly coiffed. "Girl, you won't believe the flower arrangements they just brought in. The peonies are to die for." Amanda laughed, the sound like tinkling bells in the sunlit room. "Trust Lucas to go overboard. He's probably trying to recreate the entire botanical garden in there." The three women shared a knowing smile, remembering Lucas's penchant for grand gestures. It was one of the many reasons Amanda had fallen head over heels for him 3 years ago, when they'd literally collided outside the New York Public Library, spilling coffee all over his crisp white shirt. As Amanda's bridesmaids flitted about the room, adding final touches to their makeup and adjusting their cornflower blue dresses, she found herself lost in thought. Images of her life with Lucas flashed through her mind. Their first kiss on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, the night he proposed on the rooftop of the Empire State Building, surrounded by a sea of twinkling lights. Each memory was a testament to their love story, one that seemed pulled straight from the pages of a fairy tale. 15 minutes, ladies," the wedding planner's chipper voice called from the hallway, sending a fresh wave of butterflies through Amanda's stomach. "Oh, I almost forgot," Jasmine exclaimed, reaching into her clutch. A little something blue, borrowed, and new all in one. She fastened a delicate sapphire bracelet around Amanda's wrist, a family heirloom passed down through generations. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes as she admired the sparkling gems. "It's perfect, Jazz. Thank you." The atmosphere in the room was electric with excitement and nervous energy. Amanda took a deep breath, smoothing her hands over the intricate lace bodice of her gown. This was it. In just a few moments, she would walk down the aisle towards her future, towards the man who had captured her heart and promised her forever. As her bridesmaids lined up at the door, ready to make their entrance, a young altar boy appeared, slightly out of breath. "Excuse me, Miss Amanda, this just arrived for you." He extended a simple white envelope towards her. Amanda's brow furrowed in confusion. Who would be sending her a letter now of all times? "Thank you," she murmured, taking the envelope from the boy's outstretched hand. Her mother and friends had already started to file out of the room, caught up in the excitement of the impending ceremony. Amanda stood alone, curiosity getting the better of her as she carefully opened the envelope. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as she read the words scrawled in an unfamiliar hand. "Lucas is dying. He didn't tell you because he wanted you to be happy, even knowing he can't give you the future you deserve. Today's wedding is a sham. Amanda's hands began to shake uncontrollably, the paper trembling like a leaf in a storm. The blood drained from her face, leaving her pale as the white roses in her bouquet. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the words that had just shattered her perfect world. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No, this can't be true. It can't be." But even as she denied it, memories began to surface. Lucas's unexplained absences, the weight loss he'd attributed to stress at work, the shadows that sometimes flickered behind his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. How could she have been so blind? The room began to spin, the walls closing in around her. Amanda felt as though she couldn't breathe, her chest constricting painfully. Without conscious thought, she found herself moving, her feet carrying her swiftly out of the bridal suite and down the corridor. She could hear the murmur of the gathered guests, the soft strains of the string quartet beginning to play. But it all faded into the background as the roaring in her ears grew louder. Amanda burst through the heavy wooden doors of the cathedral, heedless of the startled gasps that followed her. The bright sunlight momentarily blinded her as she stumbled down the stone steps, her white gown billowing behind her like a cloud. Tears streamed down her face, smearing the carefully applied makeup. She had no destination in mind, no plan. All she knew was that she had to get away, had to find space to breathe, to think. Passers-by on the bustling New York street stopped and stared as the bride in her flowing gown ran past, her veil trailing behind her like a gossamer banner. Some called out in concern, others pulled out their phones to capture the surreal scene. But Amanda was oblivious to it all, her mind a whirlwind of confusion, pain, and disbelief. How could Lucas have kept something so monumental from her? How could he have let her plan a future, knowing all along that he might not be there to share it? The questions pounded in her head with each frantic step she took. As she ran, the letter clutched tightly in her trembling hand. Amanda's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The perfect day she had dreamed of since childhood had twisted into a nightmare, leaving her lost and alone on the streets of the city where their love story had begun. Behind her, the bells of St. Patrick's Cathedral began to toll, their mournful sound echoing through the concrete canyons of Manhattan. It was as if they were marking not the joyous union of two souls, but the death of a dream, the end of a fairy tale that had been too good to be true. Amanda kept running, each step taking her further from the life she thought she knew, and towards an uncertain future clouded by secrets, heartbreak, and the devastating possibility of loss. Amanda's chest heaved as she collapsed onto a bench in Central Park, her pristine white gown now smudged with dirt and wrinkled from her frantic escape. The bustling oasis of greenery in the heart of Manhattan seemed to mock the turmoil raging within her. Joggers and tourists alike cast curious glances at the disheveled bride, but Amanda was oblivious to their stares, lost in a whirlwind of memories and doubts. Her trembling hands smoothed out the crumpled letter, its words burning into her consciousness with each reread. "Lucas is dying." The phrase echoed in her mind, a cruel mantra that shattered the perfect life she thought she had. As the initial shock began to subside, Amanda's analytical mind, the one that had made her a rising star at her law firm, kicked into overdrive. She began to piece together the puzzle, recalling subtle clues she'd dismissed over the past few months. There was the time Lucas had collapsed at their favorite diner in Brooklyn, blaming it on low blood sugar. The frequent business trips that left him looking more exhausted than refreshed. The way his parents had hugged her extra tight at the rehearsal dinner, their eyes brimming with an emotion she couldn't quite place. Was it sadness? How could I have been so blind? Amanda whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. A squirrel darted past, momentarily distracting her from her anguish. She watched it scurry up an oak tree, envying its simple existence. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park, Amanda knew she couldn't hide forever. Her phone, abandoned in the bridal suite, was undoubtedly blowing up with concerned messages and calls. But she wasn't ready to face the chaos she'd left behind at the church. Not yet. With a deep breath, Amanda stood, her legs shaky beneath the weight of her gown and her heavy heart. She had to know the truth, and there was only one place she could get it. Hailing a taxi proved challenging in her current state, but a kind-hearted driver finally took pity on her. "Where to, miss?" he asked, eyeing her tear-stained face in the rearview mirror. "Mount Sinai Hospital, please," Amanda replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It was where Lucas had his annual checkups, the place he'd offhandedly mentioned having some tests done a few months back. As the taxi wove through the congested streets of Manhattan, Amanda's mind raced. What would she say when she got there? Patient confidentiality would prevent the staff from divulging any information about Lucas's condition. But she had to try. The hospital loomed before her, its imposing facade a stark contrast to the joyous atmosphere she should have been experiencing on her wedding day. Amanda paid the driver and stepped out, drawing curious stares from patients and visitors alike as she ascended the steps in her wrinkled wedding gown. At the reception desk, Amanda's legal training kicked in. She spun a tale of being Lucas's wife, of needing to confirm an appointment. The sympathetic nurse, perhaps swayed by Amanda's obvious distress and wedding attire, directed her to the oncology department on the 5th floor. Oncology. The word hit Amanda like a physical blow. Cancer. Couldn't be true. The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt like an eternity. When the doors finally opened, Amanda found herself face to face with a familiar figure, Dr. Reeves, Lucas's longtime physician. Recognition flashed in the doctor's eyes, followed quickly by concern. "Amanda, what are you doing here? Isn't today your—" "Is it true?" Amanda interrupted, her voice cracking. "Is Lucas dying?" Dr. Reeves's face fell, confirming Amanda's worst fears before he even spoke. He gently guided her to a quiet corner of the waiting room, away from prying eyes and ears. "Amanda, I can't discuss Lucas's medical condition without his consent," Dr. Reeves began, his tone gentle but firm. "Please," Amanda pleaded, tears welling in her eyes once more. "I need to know. We're supposed to be getting married today, and I just found out. I can't. Please, just tell me if it's true." Dr. Reeves hesitated, clearly torn between his professional ethics and the raw desperation in Amanda's eyes. After a long moment, he sighed heavily. "Lucas has stage 4 pancreatic cancer," he said softly, his words cutting through Amanda like a knife. "We diagnosed it 3 months ago. The prognosis is not good. I'm so sorry, Amanda. He made us promise not to tell you. He wanted to protect you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the truth sank in. Amanda gripped the armrests of her chair, fighting the wave of nausea that threatened to overwhelm her. Lucas was dying. Their future, their dreams, their promises of forever, all of it was slipping away like sand through her fingers. "How long?" she managed to choke out. Dr. Reeves's eyes filled with compassion. 6 months, maybe a year with aggressive treatment. "I'm so sorry, Amanda. I urged him to tell you, but he was adamant. He said he couldn't bear to see the pain in your eyes." A strangled sob escaped Amanda's lips. The weight of the truth crushed down upon her, stealing her breath and shattering her heart into a million pieces. In that sterile hospital waiting room, still wearing the gown meant for the happiest day of her life, Amanda faced the cruel reality of a future without Lucas. As the sun set over the New York skyline, casting a golden glow through the hospital windows, Amanda made a decision. With trembling legs, she stood, smoothing down her wrinkled gown. "Thank you, Dr. Reeves," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need to go now. I have a wedding to attend." Confusion flickered across the doctor's face. "Amanda, are you sure that's wise? Given the circumstances?" But Amanda was already moving towards the elevator, a new determination in her step. She had a choice to make, one that would define the rest of her life and Lucas's. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Amanda took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The taxi ride back to St. Patrick's Cathedral was a blur. Amanda's mind raced, trying to reconcile the Lucas she knew vibrant, full of life and love, with the image of a man facing his own mortality. How could she have not seen it? How could he have hidden something so monumental from her? As the iconic spires of the cathedral came into view, Amanda felt a strange calm settle over her. She knew what she had to do. The question was, would she have the strength to do it? Stepping out of the taxi, Amanda squared her shoulders and began to climb the steps she had fled down just hours before. The murmur of voices from inside told her that, miraculously, the guests were still there, perhaps hoping for a fairy tale ending to the drama that had unfolded. Little did they know, the true test of love was about to begin. With one final deep breath, Amanda pushed open the heavy wooden doors, ready to face her future, whatever it might hold. The hushed whispers of the gathered guests fell silent as Amanda stepped into the cathedral. All eyes turned to her, a mix of concern, confusion, and relief etched on their faces. The air was thick with tension, heavy with unspoken questions. Amanda's gaze swept across the congregation, past the worried faces of her bridesmaids and the bewildered expression of her parents, until it landed on Lucas. He stood at the altar, his tuxedo slightly rumpled, his face a mask of anguish and fear. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. With measured steps, Amanda began her walk down the aisle. This wasn't the joyous procession she had imagined, accompanied by Pachelbel's cannon and beaming smiles. Instead, her footfalls echoed in the cavernous space, each step bringing her closer to a confrontation she never thought she'd face on her wedding day. As she reached Lucas, she could see the toll the secret had taken on him. His face was gaunt, his skin pale beneath the warm glow of the cathedral lights. How had she not noticed before? The guilt of her obliviousness mixed with the anger and hurt swirling inside her. "Lucas," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried in the silent church. "We need to talk." He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm so sorry, Amanda," he breathed, his voice cracking with emotion. The officiant, sensing the gravity of the moment, quietly suggested they move to a private area. Lucas took Amanda's hand, leading her to a small antechamber off to the side of the altar. As the heavy wooden door closed behind them, shutting out the curious stares of their guests, the facade they'd both been maintaining crumbled. "How could you?" Amanda's voice broke as the tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. "How could you keep this from me?" Lucas's shoulders sagged, the weight of his secret finally lifting, only to be replaced by the crushing guilt of its revelation. "I wanted to protect you," he said softly, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I couldn't bear the thought of you suffering, of watching me fade away. Protect me." Amanda's voice rose, a mix of anger and disbelief. "By lying to me? By letting me plan a future you knew we might never have?" Lucas reached for her, but Amanda stepped back, needing the physical distance to maintain her composure. "I was diagnosed 3 months ago," he explained, his voice trembling. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors, they don't think I have more than a year." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Amanda felt as if the room was spinning, her perfectly planned life disintegrating around her. "A year," she repeated, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "And you were just going to marry me without telling me? Let me find out when... I was weak," Lucas admitted, sinking into a nearby chair. "I was selfish. I wanted one perfect day with you. One day where cancer didn't exist, where we could just be Lucas and Amanda, madly in love." Amanda's heart ached at the pain in his voice, but the hurt and betrayal she felt couldn't be pushed aside. "We were supposed to face everything together, Lucas, in sickness and in health. Those weren't just words to me." "I know," Lucas whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I was so scared, Amanda. Scared of dying, scared of leaving you, scared of seeing the light go out of your eyes when you found out. I thought if we had this one perfect day, it would give you a beautiful memory to hold on to after I'm gone." The raw vulnerability in his voice cracked the wall of anger Amanda had built around her heart. She knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. "Oh, Lucas," she said softly, "don't you understand? Every day with you is a beautiful memory. Every single one. Even the hard ones. Lucas looked up, hope flickering in his tear-filled eyes. You mean? Amanda took a deep breath, her mind racing. Could she do this? Could she knowingly walk into a future filled with hospital visits, chemotherapy sessions, and the looming specter of loss? But as she looked at Lucas, she knew the answer. She had fallen in love with this man, promised to stand by him through anything. This was her chance to prove it. I mean that I love you, Lucas Bennett. Cancer or no cancer, whether we have 50 years together or one. Her voice grew stronger with each word. But no more secrets. No more trying to protect me by shutting me out. We face this together or not at all. Lucas pulled her into a fierce embrace, his body shaking with sobs of relief and regret. I'm so sorry, he murmured into her hair. I love you so much, Amanda. I promise, no more secrets. They held each other for what felt like hours, the sounds of their mingled tears the only noise in the small room. Finally, Amanda pulled back, cupping Lucas's face in her hands. So, she said, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. What do we do now? Lucas took a shaky breath, gathering his courage. Well, he said, his voice growing stronger. I still want to marry you, if you'll have me. I want to spend whatever time I have left as your husband. Amanda's heart swelled with a bittersweet mixture of love and sorrow. This wasn't the happily ever after she had dreamed of, but it was real, it was honest, and it was theirs. Then let's get married, she said softly, wiping away the last of her tears. Hand in hand, they walked back into the cathedral. The guests, who had been murmuring amongst themselves, fell silent once more. Amanda looked out at the sea of concerned faces, her parents, Lucas's family, their friends. These were the people who would support them through the difficult journey ahead. Amanda cleared her throat, her voice ringing out clear and strong. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, squeezing Lucas's hand. We appreciate your patience. Lucas and I have had an important discussion, and we've made a decision. She paused, looking up at Lucas, who nodded encouragingly. We're getting married today, Amanda continued, a collective gasp rippling through the congregation. But before we do, we want to be honest with all of you. Lucas has been diagnosed with cancer. The shocked silence that followed was deafening. Amanda pressed on, her voice wavering slightly but gaining strength with each word. Our journey together may be shorter than we had hoped, but it will be filled with more love than we ever thought possible. We're asking for your support and understanding as we face this challenge together. As she finished speaking, Amanda held her breath, waiting for the reaction. For a moment, the cathedral was utterly still. Then, from the back of the church, a single person began to applaud. Soon, others joined in, the sound swelling until it filled the entire space. Tears of gratitude and love streamed down Amanda and Lucas's faces as they turned to the officiant. Shall we begin? Amanda asked, her voice filled with a newfound determination. The officiant nodded, a look of deep respect in his eyes. Dearly beloved, he began, his voice ringing out over the assembled guests. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Amanda and Lucas, two souls whose love has already been tested by fire and emerged stronger for it. As the ceremony began, Amanda and Lucas stood facing each other, their hands clasped tightly. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges they could scarcely imagine. But in that moment, surrounded by the love and support of their family and friends, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead together. The soft glow of candlelight flickered across the faces of Amanda and Lucas as they stood before their loved ones, hands clasped tightly. The air in St. Patrick's Cathedral was thick with emotion, a potent mix of joy, sorrow, and unwavering love. I, Amanda Claire Thompson, her voice rang out, clear and strong despite the tears glistening in her eyes. Take you, Lucas James Bennett, to be my lawfully wedded husband. As she spoke the traditional vows, each word took on a new, profound meaning. In sickness and in health, no longer felt like a distant possibility, but an immediate reality they would face together. To have and to hold, from this day forward, Lucas repeated, his voice husky with emotion. His hands trembled slightly in Amanda's grasp. Whether from the weight of the moment or the illness coursing through his body, she couldn't be sure. For better, for worse, they promised each other, fully aware of the worse that loomed on their horizon. Yet there was a fierce determination in both their eyes, a silent vow to make every moment count. For richer, for poorer, Amanda continued, thinking of the medical bills that would undoubtedly pile up. But in that moment, she knew that the richness of their love would sustain them through any financial hardship. In sickness and in health, Lucas's voice cracked slightly on these words. Amanda squeezed his hands tighter, her eyes never leaving his, silently communicating her unwavering support. To love and to cherish, they spoke in unison. Till death do us part. The finality of these words hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the battle they faced. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a bittersweet cheer rose from the assembled guests. Amanda and Lucas sealed their vows with a kiss that was both tender and desperate, clinging to each other as if they could stop time through sheer force of will. The reception that followed was a subdued affair, markedly different from the joyous celebration they had originally planned. The extravagant floral arrangements and gourmet menu seemed almost garish in light of their new reality. Yet, there were moments of genuine happiness too. The first dance where Amanda and Lucas swayed gently in each other's arms, lost in their own world. The heartfelt toasts from friends and family, each word laden with extra meaning. As the evening wore on, Amanda found herself overwhelmed by the roller coaster of emotions. She slipped away from the reception hall, finding a quiet corner in the church's garden. The cool night air was a welcome relief after the stuffy interior. There you are, Lucas's soft voice came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, and Amanda leaned back into his embrace, savoring the solid warmth of his body against hers. I just needed a moment, she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. It's also overwhelming, Lucas finished for her. She nodded, turning in his arms to face him. In the pale moonlight, Lucas looked almost ethereal. Amanda's heart clenched as she thought about how much time they might have left. I'm scared, Lucas, she admitted, voicing the fear that had been gnawing at her since she'd learned the truth. Lucas pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Me too, he confessed. But I'm less scared now that I have you by my side. We'll face this together, remember? Amanda nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Together, she echoed. They stood in silence for a long moment, the distant sounds of the city a faint backdrop to their shared breaths. I have something for you, Lucas said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to give this to you tonight anyway. But now, well, it seems even more fitting. Amanda opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When she opened it, she found a tiny photograph of the two of them on one side. On the other was an inscription, "For all our tomorrows." A sob caught in Amanda's throat as she read the words. Oh, Lucas, she breathed. I want you to wear this close to your heart, Lucas said, gently taking the locket and fastening it around her neck, so that no matter what happens, you'll always have a piece of me with you. Amanda touched the locket, feeling its weight against her skin. It was a tangible reminder of their love, of the promises they'd made. It's perfect, she whispered, pulling Lucas in for a deep, passionate kiss. As they made their way back to the reception, hand in hand, Amanda felt a new resolve settling over her. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult. There would be pain, fear, and heartache. But there would also be love, deep, enduring love that could weather any storm. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of well wishes and bittersweet congratulations. As they bid farewell to their guests, Amanda caught sight of her reflection in a mirror. The woman who looked back at her was different from the bride who had fled the church earlier that day. Her eyes held a new wisdom, her posture a quiet strength. Later that night, as they lay tangled in each other's arms in the honeymoon suite, Lucas whispered. I'm sorry our forever won't be as long as we'd hoped. Amanda propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at her husband. In the soft light of dawn, she could see the worry lines etched on his face, the fear lurking behind his eyes. With gentle fingers, she traced the contours of his face, committing every detail to memory. Lucas, she said softly, but with conviction, our forever isn't measured in years. It's measured in the depth of our love, in the memories we create, in the lives we touch. And by that measure, we'll have an eternity. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the window, painting the room in hues of gold and pink, Amanda and Lucas held each other close. They knew that the days ahead would be filled with both joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. But they were ready to face whatever came their way, their love a beacon of hope in the uncertain future. For in that moment, they understood a profound truth, that true love isn't about the quantity of time you have, but the quality of the moments you share. And they were determined to make every moment count. The weeks following their wedding passed in a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, treatment plans, and stolen moments of normalcy. Amanda and Lucas's apartment, once filled with wedding gifts and the promise of a long future together, now housed a growing collection of medical supplies and prescription bottles. Amanda stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of homemade chicken soup, Lucas's favorite comfort food. The rhythmic motion was soothing, allowing her mind to wander. She glanced at the calendar hanging on the fridge, its days marked with chemotherapy sessions and checkups. Had it really only been 2 months since their wedding day? The sound of coughing from the bedroom snapped her back to reality. Amanda quickly turned off the stove and rushed to Lucas's side. He was sitting up in bed, his body racked with violent coughs that seemed to shake his entire frame. Easy, love? Amanda murmured, rubbing soothing circles on his back. She reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, helping Lucas take small sips between coughs. As the coughing subsided, Lucas leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion etched on his face. The toll of the aggressive chemotherapy was evident. His once thick hair had thinned considerably, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Thanks, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I don't know what I'd do without you. Amanda perched on the edge of the bed, taking Lucas's hand in hers. You don't have to find out, she said with a small smile. I'm not going anywhere. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. But I am, he said softly, the words hanging heavy in the air between them. Amanda felt her heart constrict. They'd had this conversation before, but it never got easier. Lucas, don't talk like that. The doctors said the treatment isn't working as well as they'd hoped. Lucas interrupted gently. We both know what that means, Amanda. She wanted to argue, to rail against the unfairness of it all. But the look in Lucas's eyes, a mixture of love, fear, and resignation, stopped her. Instead, she climbed into bed beside him, careful not to jostle him too much, and wrapped her arms around his frail body. I'm not ready, she whispered into his shoulder, her voice breaking. I'll never be ready to let you go. Lucas stroked her hair, his touch as gentle as ever despite his weakened state. I know, my love, I'm not ready either. There's still so much I want to do, so much I want to see with you. They lay in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The soft beeping of the medical equipment in the corner served as a constant reminder of their altered reality. Amanda, Lucas said suddenly, his voice stronger than it had been in days. I need you to promise me something. She lifted her head to meet his gaze, worry creasing her brow. Anything, she said without hesitation. Lucas took a deep breath, wincing slightly at the pain it caused. I need you to promise that when the time comes, when it's clear that there's nothing more we can do, you'll let me go. Amanda felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Lucas, please, he interrupted, his eyes pleading. I don't want to spend my last days in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines. I want to be here, in our home, with you. I want to die with dignity. Tears streamed down Amanda's face as she struggled to find words. The thought of actively choosing to let Lucas go was almost unbearable. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw not just the pain and fatigue, but also a flicker of the man she fell in love with, strong, determined, and always thinking of her first. "Okay," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "I promise. But not yet, Lucas. Please, not yet." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Not yet," he agreed. "We still have time." The next few weeks were a blur of good days and bad. On the good days, they would sit on their small balcony, watching the bustling New York streets below. Lucas would reminisce about their first date, the night he proposed, the little moments that had defined their relationship. Amanda hung on every word, storing each memory like a precious gem. On the bad days, when the pain was too much and even the strongest medication barely took the edge off, Amanda would lie beside Lucas, reading his favorite books aloud or simply holding his hand in silence. As autumn gave way to winter, Lucas's condition deteriorated rapidly. The once vibrant man who had swept Amanda off her feet was now a shadow of his former self. Yet, his love for her remained as strong as ever, shining through his eyes even when he was too weak to speak. It was on a crisp December morning, with snow falling gently outside their window, that Lucas turned to Amanda and said the words she'd been dreading. "It's time, my love," he whispered, his breath labored. "I'm ready." Amanda felt her world crumbling around her. But she remembered her promise, and the love she saw in Lucas's eyes gave her strength. With trembling hands, she called the hospice nurse and their families. The next few hours passed in a haze of quiet conversations and tearful goodbyes. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow across the room, Amanda climbed into bed beside Lucas one last time. "I love you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for loving me, for choosing me, for giving me the happiest months of my life." Lucas summoned the last of his strength to cup her face in his hand. "Thank you for being my forever, Amanda, for giving me a lifetime of love in such a short time." As the light faded from his eyes, Lucas's last words were barely a whisper. "For all our tomorrows." Amanda held him as he took his final breath, her tears falling silently. The locket he had given her on their wedding night felt heavy against her chest, a tangible reminder of their eternal love. In that quiet moment, as the first stars appeared in the night sky, Amanda realized that saying goodbye to Lucas was indeed impossible. For the love they shared, the memories they had created, would live on in her heart forever. It wasn't goodbye. It was until we meet again. And though the pain of loss was overwhelming, Amanda found solace in knowing that their love story, brief as it was, had been filled with more passion, more depth, and more meaning than many experience in a lifetime. As she kissed Lucas's forehead one last time, Amanda whispered, "For all our tomorrows, my love, always." The harsh winter light filtered through the partially drawn curtains of Amanda and Lucas's apartment, casting long shadows across the now quiet bedroom. It had been 3 days since Lucas had taken his last breath, and Amanda felt as if she were moving through a thick fog, her movements mechanical and her mind numb. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the black dress she had chosen for the funeral. The woman staring back at her seemed like a stranger, pale, with dark circles under her eyes and a haunted look that she didn't recognize. Her fingers absently reached for the locket around her neck, the cool metal a comforting weight against her skin. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her reverie. "Amanda?" her mother's gentle voice called. "The car is here, sweetheart. It's time to go." Amanda took a deep breath, steeling herself for the day ahead. As she stepped out of the bedroom, she was enveloped in her mother's embrace. "You can do this," her mother whispered, stroking her hair. "Lucas would be so proud of you." The ride to the funeral home was a blur. Amanda stared out the window, watching the New York streets pass by. Everywhere she looked, she saw memories of her time with Lucas, the coffee shop where they had their first date, the park where they used to have picnics, the bookstore where he proposed. It seemed impossible that the world could just go on turning when her entire world had stopped. As they arrived at the funeral home, Amanda was struck by the number of people who had come to pay their respects. Friends, family, colleagues, all gathered to celebrate Lucas's life and mourn his passing. The outpouring of love and support was overwhelming. The service was beautiful in its simplicity. Amanda had chosen Lucas's favorite songs to play, and his closest friends shared touching anecdotes that brought both laughter and tears. When it was Amanda's turn to speak, she approached the podium with trepidation. Looking out at the sea of faces, she took a deep breath and began. Lucas once told me that our forever wasn't measured in years, but in the depth of our love and the memories we created. Standing here today, I understand what he meant more than ever. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. In the short time we had together, Lucas taught me more about love, courage, and living life to the fullest than I ever thought possible. He faced his illness with grace and humor, always more concerned about those around him than himself. Tears welled up in her eyes, but Amanda pressed on. Before he left us, Lucas made me promise him something. He asked me to live, not just exist, but to really live. To embrace life with the same passion and joy that he did, even in his darkest moments. She touched the locket at her neck, drawing strength from it. So today, as we say goodbye to my husband, my best friend, my soulmate, I make this promise to all of you, and to Lucas. I will live. I will love. I will carry his memory with me always, but I won't let grief consume me, because that's not what Lucas would have wanted. As Amanda stepped down from the podium, a quiet murmur of agreement and support rippled through the gathering. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Lucas's mother, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," the older woman whispered, pulling Amanda into a tight embrace. After the service, as friends and family gathered to share memories and offer condolences, Amanda felt a sudden need for air. She slipped out of the funeral home and found herself walking aimlessly down the street. Before she knew it, she had arrived at Central Park, the very spot where she had collapsed in her wedding dress just a few months ago, reeling from the news of Lucas's illness. She sat on the same bench, the cold seeping through her black dress, and looked out at the bare trees and frost-covered grass. "I miss you," she whispered to the empty park. "I miss you so much it hurts to breathe sometimes." As if in response, a gust of wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a few errant snowflakes. Amanda closed her eyes, remembering how Lucas had loved the first snowfall of the year. She could almost hear his voice, urging her to stick out her tongue to catch a flake. With tears streaming down her face, Amanda did just that. And for the first time since Lucas had passed, she felt a small smile tugging at her lips. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the winter park, Amanda made a decision. She would honor Lucas's last wish. She would live not just for herself, but for both of them. Standing up, she brushed the snow from her dress and began to walk back towards the funeral home. As she walked, she started to make plans. She would take that cooking class Lucas had always encouraged her to try. She would finally visit Paris, a dream they had shared. She would volunteer at the cancer ward, offering support to others facing the same battle Lucas had fought so bravely. Each step felt like a tiny victory, a small act of defiance against the grief that threatened to consume her. It wouldn't be easy, she knew. There would be days when the pain would be overwhelming, when she would want nothing more than to curl up in bed and shut out the world. But she would face those days too, because that's what Lucas would have done. As she re-entered the funeral home, Amanda was greeted by concerned looks from her family and friends. But something in her expression must have changed, because her mother's worried frown softened into a small, understanding smile. "You okay, sweetheart?" her father asked, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Amanda nodded, her hand once again finding the locket around her neck. "I will be," she said softly. "I made a promise, after all." The rest of the day passed in a blur of hugs, shared memories, and quiet moments of reflection. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, Amanda found herself back in their her apartment. She moved through the room slowly, running her fingers over Lucas's books, his favorite mug, the throw blanket he always hogged on movie nights. Each object held a memory, a piece of the life they had shared. Finally, she came to their bedroom. On the nightstand sat a small, wrapped package, a gift Lucas had prepared before he passed, with instructions for Amanda to open it after the funeral. With trembling hands, Amanda unwrapped the gift. Inside was a journal, its leather cover soft and worn. A note fell out as she opened it. "My dearest Amanda, in this journal, I've written down all the dreams and adventures I hoped we'd share together. Now, I'm passing these dreams on to you. Live them for both of us. Fill these pages with your experiences, your joys, your sorrows, and know that wherever I am, I'm cheering you on. For all our tomorrows, Lucas." Amanda clutched the journal to her chest, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. But for the first time since Lucas's passing, these weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of love, and of hope. As night fell over New York City, Amanda curled up in bed, the journal open beside her. She picked up a pen and, after a moment's hesitation, began to write. "Dear Lucas, today I said goodbye to you, but I also made a promise to live, to love, to embrace all the tomorrows we'll never share. It won't be easy, but I'll do it. For you, for us, for all our tomorrows. I love you always, Amanda." As she closed the journal, Amanda felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would be long and often difficult, but she wasn't walking it alone. Lucas's love, his memory, his dreams, they would be with her every step of the way. And so, on this cold winter night, as the city lights twinkled like stars outside her window, Amanda began the next chapter of her life, a chapter filled with both sorrow and hope, endings and new beginnings. A chapter written in honor of a love that, though brief, had changed her forever. The soft beep of medical equipment punctuated the stillness of the night. Amanda sat vigilant by Lucas's bedside, her hand gently clasping his. The past few weeks had been a blur of hospital visits, pain management, and fleeting moments of lucidity. Now, as the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, Amanda knew in her heart that the end was near. Lucas's breathing had become shallow and labored. His once vibrant face was now gaunt and pale, a stark contrast to the man she had married just months ago. Yet, even in his weakened state, there was a serene beauty about him that took Amanda's breath away. "Amanda," Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face with effort. "I'm here, my love," she responded, leaning in close. "I'm right here." Lucas managed a weak smile. "You're so beautiful," he murmured. I want you to remember me like this. Looking at you, loving you." Tears welled up in Amanda's eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to be strong for Lucas in these final moments. "I'll remember every moment, every smile, every touch," she promised, her voice thick with emotion. "Good," Lucas breathed. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes closing as he gathered his strength. When he opened them again, there was an urgency in his gaze. "Amanda, I need you to promise me something. Anything," she said without hesitation. "Live," Lucas said, his voice suddenly stronger. "Really live. Don't let my death be the end of your life too. Promise me you'll find joy again." Amanda felt her heart breaking all over again. The thought of finding happiness without Lucas seemed impossible. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw the depth of his love, his desire for her to have a full and beautiful life even after he was gone. "I promise," she whispered, bringing his hand to her lips and kissing it gently. "I'll live for both of us, Lucas. I'll carry your love with me always." A peaceful smile spread across Lucas's face. "That's my girl," he murmured. "I love you, Amanda. For all our tomorrows." "For all our tomorrows," Amanda echoed, her voice breaking. Lucas's eyes closed, his breathing becoming more labored. Amanda climbed onto the bed beside him, careful not to disturb the various tubes and wires. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him close as she had done so many times before. As the sun began to rise, painting the room in soft hues of pink and gold, Lucas took his final breath. It was a gentle exhale, barely perceptible, and then silence. The absence of the rhythmic beeping from the heart monitor confirmed what Amanda already knew. Lucas was gone. For a long moment, Amanda remained still, her arms still wrapped around Lucas's body. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing. Finally, she sat up, gently brushing a lock of hair from Lucas's forehead. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you for loving me, for choosing me, for giving me a lifetime of love in such a short time." The next few hours passed in a blur. Nurses came and went, offering condolences and handling the necessary paperwork. Amanda called their families, her voice mechanical as she delivered the news. She felt as if she were moving through a thick fog, disconnected from the world around her. As the day wore on, Amanda found herself alone in their apartment. The silence was oppressive, every corner filled with memories of Lucas. She wandered from room to room, touching his belongings, breathing in his lingering scent on his favorite sweater. In their bedroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked lost, broken. But around her neck, the locket Lucas had given her on their wedding day glinted in the fading light. With trembling fingers, Amanda opened the locket. Inside was the tiny photograph of her and Lucas, smiling and carefree. On the other side, the inscription, "For all our tomorrows." A sob escaped her lips as the full weight of her loss crashed over her. Amanda sank to the floor, clutching the locket to her chest as she wept. She cried for the future they would never have, for the children they would never raise, for the lifetime of love cut tragically short. As night fell, Amanda found herself on their small balcony, looking out over the twinkling lights of New York City. The world seemed to be moving on, oblivious to the fact that her world had stopped turning. "How am I supposed to do this without you?" she whispered to the night sky. "How do I live when half of my heart is gone?" As if in answer, a warm breeze caressed her face, carrying with it the faint scent of Lucas's cologne. Amanda closed her eyes, allowing herself to imagine, just for a moment, that it was Lucas's gentle touch. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the bustling city yet utterly alone, Amanda made a decision. She would honor Lucas's last wish. She would live, not just exist, but truly live. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be days when the pain would be overwhelming. But she would face each day with courage, carrying Lucas's love with her always. Opening her eyes, Amanda looked up at the stars twinkling faintly through the city's light pollution. "I love you, Lucas," she said softly, "for all our tomorrows." As she turned to go back inside, Amanda felt a subtle shift within herself. The pain was still there, raw and all-consuming, but alongside it was a tiny spark of something else. Hope, perhaps, or the first stirrings of the strength she would need to face the days ahead. Amanda knew the journey before her would be long and often difficult. There would be moments of despair, days when getting out of bed would feel like an insurmountable task. But there would also be moments of joy, of laughter, of love. And in each of those moments, Lucas would be with her in spirit, cheering her on. As she closed the balcony door behind her, Amanda touched the locket around her neck. It was a tangible reminder of the love she and Lucas had shared, a love that transcended even death. And with that love to guide her, she would face whatever tomorrow might bring. For now, though, she allowed herself to grieve, to feel the full depth of her loss, to honor the silence that Lucas's absence had left in her world. Because it was in acknowledging this pain that she would eventually find the strength to heal, to live, to love again. And so, as the city outside continued its relentless rhythm, Amanda curled up in their bed, surrounded by Lucas's lingering presence. She closed her eyes, allowing the memories of their time together to wash over her. In the quiet of the night, she whispered one last time, "For all our tomorrows, my love, always." 6 months had passed since that fateful morning when Lucas took his final breath. The harsh New York winter had given way to a vibrant spring, and now the city basked in the warmth of early summer. Amanda stood at the window of her apartment, their apartment, watching the world go by below. She fingered the locket around her neck, a habit she'd developed over the past months. It was her connection to Lucas, a tangible reminder of the love they'd shared and the promise she'd made. "I'm trying, Lucas," she whispered, her breath fogging the glass slightly. "I'm really trying." And she was. The past 6 months had been a roller coaster of emotions, days of overwhelming grief, followed by moments of unexpected joy, nights of loneliness punctuated by dreams where Lucas still lived. But through it all, Amanda had held on to her promise to truly live. She glanced at the journal on her nightstand, the one Lucas had left for her. Its pages were no longer empty. Each day she wrote something, even if it was just a single line. Some days it was a memory of Lucas. Other days it was a small victory in her journey of healing. And increasingly it was about new experiences, new friendships, new dreams. A knock at the door pulled Amanda from her reverie. She opened it to find Jasmine, her best friend and maid of honor, standing there with a determined look on her face. "All right, girl," Jasmine said, striding into the apartment. "It's time. You're coming with me." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "Time for what? Remember that cooking class you mentioned? The one Lucas always wanted you to take. Well, I signed us up. It starts in an hour." For a moment, panic fluttered in Amanda's chest. It had been easier to talk about doing things than to actually do them. But as she looked at Jasmine's expectant face, she felt a small spark of excitement. "Okay," she said, surprising herself with her enthusiasm. "Let me grab my purse." The cooking class was held in a small, cozy kitchen in the East Village. As Amanda tied on her apron, she felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. The chef, a jovial man with a thick Italian accent, began the class by asking everyone to introduce themselves. When it was her turn, Amanda took a deep breath. "I'm Amanda," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "My husband always wanted me to learn to cook, but I never found the time. I'm here to finally make good on that." The words hung in the air for a moment, and Amanda felt the familiar pang of grief. But then the chef clapped his hands together. "Ah, Bella, your husband had good taste. By the end of this class, you'll be cooking like a true Italian nana." Laughter rippled through the group, and Amanda found herself smiling. As they began chopping vegetables and kneading dough, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. A sense of accomplishment, of moving forward. Later that evening, as Amanda sat on her balcony enjoying the pasta she'd made in class, she pulled out her journal. "Dear Lucas," she wrote, "today I cooked. Really cooked, not just heated up a frozen dinner. Remember how you always said I'd love it once I tried? You were right, as usual. It felt good to create something, to nourish myself in a way I haven't in months. I think you would have been proud." She paused, her pen hovering over the paper. Then, with a small smile, she continued, "I'm starting to understand what you meant about living. It's not about grand gestures or life-changing events. It's about these small moments, these tiny steps forward. It's about finding joy in a perfectly cooked pasta, or in the way the sunset paints the sky. It's hard, and some days I still feel like I'm drowning in grief. But I'm trying, Lucas. I'm really trying." As the weeks passed, Amanda found herself taking more of these small steps. She joined a support group for young widows and widowers, finding solace in sharing her story and hearing others. She volunteered at the hospital where Lucas had received treatment, offering comfort to patients and families facing similar battles. One sunny Saturday, Amanda found herself back in Central Park, in the spot where she had collapsed on her wedding day. But this time, instead of grief, she felt a strange sense of peace. She sat on the bench, closed her eyes, and let the warmth of the sun wash over her. "I miss you," she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her locket. "I'll always miss you, but I'm learning to carry you with me in a way that doesn't weigh me down." As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the nearby trees. Amanda opened her eyes, watching as a couple walked by hand in hand, lost in conversation. For the first time since Lucas's death, the sight didn't fill her with bitter envy. Instead, she felt a gentle warmth, a recognition of the beauty of love in all its forms. That night, Amanda dreamed of Lucas. In the dream, they were back on their wedding day, dancing under the stars. But this time, there was no shadow of illness, no ticking clock counting down their time together. "I'm so proud of you," Dream Lucas said, holding her close. "You're living, Amanda. Really living." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sorrow. For the first time in months, Amanda felt truly at peace. As the first anniversary of Lucas's death approached, Amanda decided to honor his memory in a way that felt true to the promise she'd made. She organized a fundraiser for the hospital's cancer ward, bringing together friends, family, and even some of Lucas's former colleagues. Standing at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, Amanda felt a surge of emotion. "A year ago," she began, her voice steady, "I lost the love of my life. Lucas was... he was everything. My husband, my best friend, my soulmate. Losing him felt like losing a part of myself." She paused, her hand going to the locket around her neck. "But Lucas left me with a gift. He made me promise to live, to really live. Not just to exist, but to embrace life with the same passion and joy that he did, even in his darkest moments." Amanda's eyes scanned the crowd, seeing tears on many faces. "It hasn't been easy. There are still days when the grief feels overwhelming. But I'm here today to tell you that it is possible to honor the memory of those we've lost by living our lives to the fullest. That's what this fundraiser is about. It's about creating hope, about turning our pain into something beautiful." As applause filled the room, Amanda felt a warmth spread through her chest. She could almost hear Lucas's voice, saying, "That's my girl." Later that night, as Amanda prepared for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same one who had fled the church in her wedding dress, or the broken shell who had watched Lucas take his last breath. This woman had lines of grief etched on her face, yes, but also a strength in her eyes, a quiet determination in the set of her jaw. She opened her journal one last time. "Dear Lucas, it's been a year of pain, of growth, of learning to live without you. I miss you every day, with every breath. But I'm keeping my promise. I'm living, Lucas, really living. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever love again the way I loved you. But I do know that I'll keep moving forward, keep honoring your memory by embracing all that life has to offer. For all our tomorrows, my love, always and forever, Amanda." As she closed the journal, Amanda felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she was ready to face it. With Lucas's love in her heart and his promise guiding her way, she would step into tomorrow with hope, with courage, and with an open heart. For in the end, that was the greatest lesson Lucas had taught her, that true love, real love, doesn't end with death. It lives on in memory, in action, in the way we choose to face each new day. And so, as the city lights twinkled outside her window like 1,000 stars, Amanda closed her eyes, ready to dream, to hope, to live, for all their tomorrows. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button below and join our community. Based on your interests, we've picked this story for you that's showing on your screen right now. Click to watch it now. We're sure you'll love it. See you next time.